Hi, my name is Olia, and welcome to my place. This is not a podcast about movie reviews or ratings. It's a space where stories from movies, TV series, or books meet our feelings. A quiet corner to reflect, to breathe, and to remember that emotions are not a weakness. They are what make us human. Think of this as your emotional nightcap, like a glass of feelings before sleep. I'll be your companion, sharing scenes, emotions, and little reflections so you can feel calmer, more connected, and never alone with what you feel. So get comfortable. Let's step into the story together. Every time someone asks me about to recommend TV series, I pull a thoughtful face and wave it off, saying I'm not really the right person for that. I don't watch them often. Rarely, but when I do, it's the right one. These shows, 8 seasons, 20 episodes each, 40 minutes long, then a break for 6 months if you're lucky, or a year. And worst of all, when they just cancel it without an ending. How are you supposed to endure that torture? How can you watch one story stretched out for so many hours and still keep going as if it's the first time? But of course, you just do. At 16, I used to run home from school just to watch The Vampire Diaries. And so what if I didn't know English? It wasn't a problem. Many fans like me had already made subtitles. At 24, I couldn't wait for Wednesdays to watch the next episode of WandaVision. How could anyone miss a Marvel masterpiece like that? Then I binged Bridgerton in just 2 nights and spent the next 2 weeks replaying my favorite moments. At 25, I gave up an entire night to watch a series start to finish. It started innocently enough. I'll put on a couple of episodes, catch some easy romance, then head to bed. But instead, I found myself trapped into an emotional roller coaster that lasted nearly 7 hours. How did that happen? Why this show of all shows? And why did it pull me in so deeply that my next therapy session turned into a full unpacking of its plot and my own thoughts around it? I don't know the mechanism, but I do know it wasn't random. The show was Sex Life, a story about what it's like to wake up at 35 and suddenly feel you might put on the wrong coat. Or maybe it is the right one, but today it just doesn't see it right. That's the question the main character keeps wrestling with. As always, no spoilers up front. I'll give you a heads up when they start. The show is just 1 season for now. No word on renewal. But honestly, 8 episodes are plenty for a story that feels complete. And what a story it is. It dives straight into the uncomfortable stuff. Monogamy, childhood scars, family baggage passed down like an heirloom no one asked for. Toxic love, bad choices. Now imagine, you, 35, you wake up one morning and suddenly everything feels off. The partner beside you, the life you once dreamed of, the house you worked so hard for. Even you don't feel like you. It's as if a forgotten version of yourself steers awake. At first it whispers, hesitant and unsure. But soon, that voice is no longer gentle. It's deafening, roaring that this is all wrong. That you betrayed yourself. And that's when it rips you apart. What do you do with the life you've built? Do you tear it all down? You can't. Or maybe you can. You tell yourself to banish those forbidden thoughts, to lock them away. But what if they're not going anywhere? What if they return like a shadow that refuses to leave? This voice, yours, the real one, the part of you buried under 7 logs, convinced it's fine, it'll do. Until one day, the logs break, and the life you thought was steady begins to crumble, piece by piece. The main character realizes she misses her great ex, the one who left the deepest mark, and starts questioning the choices she's made. After all, she's married to a solid, stable, kind man. They have 2 beautiful children. On the surface, it looks perfect. But that illusion crumbles as easily as a house of cards in the wind. Now, a little spoiler and some reflection. The series leans heavily on sex and monogamy. Billy, the heroine, is convinced monogamy is the greatest gift humanity has in relationships. And then comes Brad, the handsome, wealthy, sharp-minded producer of a music label. It's explosive chemistry, earth-shattering sex, raw desire, and total emotional connection. Both are walking bundles of trauma, each scared by absent fathers. Together they turn love into a rollercoaster ride of push and pull, hot and cold, anxious and avoidant in one messy cocktail. He pushes her away, then begs her back. Round and round it goes, until finally he slams the door with a brutal full stop, packing her things and saying, "You too much for me. I can't change." It breaks Billy, but she never humiliates herself. That's what makes her fascinating. She finds the strength to move on, to build a life without him. And that's when she meets Cooper, her steady, dependable husband-to-be. Everything is fine. Everything is safe until sex stops being something they share in the bedroom and becomes nothing more than a definition in a textbook. That absence becomes her trigger, and that's where the story only begins. At first glance, it all seems simple. Her husband stopped paying attention, and she started craving passion and desire again. So her mind searched up the last vivid memories it had. Her ex, Brad. Just a sex problem, right? But then why didn't she try to reignite the spark with her husband when the story began with fire too? Because sex is never just about sex. Everyone defines it differently. For Billy, it meant freedom, hunger, desire, emotional intimacy so raw it almost suffocates. It's obvious isn't about a one-night stand. What's really at play is a wound begging to be healed. And her husband, steady and balanced as he is, could never be the one to do it. He offers her safety, stability, predictability, but not the storm she craves. Not the emotional release, not the mental unraveling she secretly longs for. Safety is comforting, yes. But is that what Billy truly wants? That unanswered question keeps pressing at the surface. The trauma demands to be heard, to be seen. Maybe if she'd worked through it sometime in the last 8 years, none of this would have happened. But she didn't want to let it go. She tucked Brett away like an old keepsake in the dusty attic closet of her mind. And then, when the time came, she opened the door herself. Deep down, her subconscious was screaming, "This isn't over." Even while the conscious Billy was busy building a picture-perfect family life, slipping into the role of housewife and quietly abandoning her old ambitions in psychology. That's why I don't buy her final scene, when she says it's just sex and nothing will change. Come on. She kept that pink leather jacket for 8 years. How could this possibly be just about sex? This is the kind of choice that flips a life upside down. And you can see it in their eyes. Both of them know it. The truth is, She's terrified of making the decision that would turn her world 180 degrees. It makes sense. How can she be sure of Brad? She has 2 kids who depend on her, and she hasn't worked in nearly a decade. How can she step into what Brad is offering when she knows he once left her at the worst possible moment, even if he always came back? Billy's caution isn't weakness, it's survival. But I'm also convinced if he really has changed, if he really has healed, he can meet her there. In time. Trust isn't built overnight. It's earned, brick by brick, over years. And yeah, there's so much freedom, joy, and lightness when she finally lets herself feel. When she embraces the part of herself she's been silencing all these years. She notices it, accepts it, and the old wound finally smiles back. And Brad breaks my heart too. I get the honesty in his motives. He truly believes this time will be different, that he can win Billy back and make it work. They are cut from the same cloth, and that's why when the credits rolled, I found myself quietly hoping they'd somehow pull it off. Because it's never too late to fix your mistakes. 35 is still so young enough to rewrite your story, to start again, to choose happiness. I cried, not because the show was sad, but because I was scared for them. Scared that they wouldn't allow themselves that chance. And maybe, if I'm honest, because I'm afraid too. Afraid of waking up at 35 and realizing I've been wearing the wrong coat all along. And worse, that I hate that color, even if it's pure white trimmed with diamonds. What I really want is the black leather jacket with red rubies sparkling at the seams. I don't want to keep settling for compromises. That's why it matters so much knowing what you want. Juice or water, pasta or pizza, this partner or that one. You have to know yourself, your reactions, your wounds, your expectations. And even if, and this is a big if, you can't heal every wound completely, you can still cushion the fall. Lay down straw where the ground feels fragile. That, I believe. But let me finish with this. I have some thoughts about the husband. In truth, he lit the match that set this fire. The moment he opened his wife's private diary, I leave the MacBook passwords questions for another day. But here's the real red flag waving in my mind. Why cross that boundary at all? Why read something so personal and worse? Why not stop the second he realized what it was? Instead, he let the resentment fester and started competing with a ghost. And that, I think, was his biggest mistake. The very spark that leads the turning point of the story. Imagine the different reality. If he reads the diary and instead of swallowing it whole, he decides to talk. To ask his wife why she wrote it, what she truly wanted, what pushed her to put those words on paper, what was happening inside her. Billy would have admitted it. She would have apologized and confessed that she missed both physical and emotional closeness, that she was drawing in loneliness and endless household chores. He could have hired a full-time nanny, brought sex back into the bedroom, and Billy could have returned to grad school. Of course, somewhere in the middle of all that, there would be a very real conversation about boundaries. But the point stands. Instead, Cooper turns a phantom enemy into flesh and blood with his own hands. Distant memories became closer than ever, and the forbidden fruit tasted sweeter. Because he was too afraid of having a direct conversation with his wife. His insecurities and fears grew teeth. Then he dragged them into reality. Sadly, it could stay as a fragile daydreams, sand castles washed away by the tide, hardened into something else entirely. It got to the point where Cooper literally followed Brad, stepped into the same shower stall, compared the size of their manhoods. I think we both know how that comparison ended. If a woman always chooses the man she sees as the strongest, then the writers played the trump card well. They made it simple for the audience. They put weak Cooper right next to strong Brad. And honestly, a man who doesn't sneak into locker rooms to size up another guy's anatomy is already ahead in my book. Don't you think? But let's take a closer look at Brad. The question is pretty straightforward. What exactly was he doing for those 8 years? That's right, nothing. He was sleeping with anything that moved, and if it didn't move, he gave it a push and slept with it anyway. Meanwhile, the supposed love of his life was piecing herself back together, building a new family, a new life step by step. Oh, and I forgot to mention, somewhere in that stretch of time, he also managed to sleep with her best friend. So no excuses about trying to forget her or moving on. That's not heartbreak, that's recklessness. Or better yet, lack of principles. A man who doesn't have the courage to fix his mistakes, or who runs from the weight of his own feelings, shouldn't be stirring up storms in me. That's what I always tell myself when I see this kind of plot twist in book or films. For now, it's something I say. One day, I'll start believing it. I can't find any excuse for his inaction. What I can do is try to explain what I think was happening in his world. When Brad sees Billy after 8 long years of silence, something inside him flips like a switch. The hunter wakes up, the one who plays a ruthless game with no rules. Will she come if I call? Will she leave everything behind if I sound convincing enough? I don't know if he thinks this through deliberately, or if it's some subconscious reflex kicking in, but what I do know is this. He hadn't cared enough to reach out for 8 years. Not until that fateful day when he stumbled across her again. Maybe he really does believe with all his heart that this time it will work. After all, don't we all want to be happy? Maybe he believes it is as fiercely as he did in every previous round of the endless hot and cold game, which makes him not the aggressor in this triangle, but just as much as a victim as Billy. And that leads me to the third reason this series sank so deeply into me that I'm still thinking about it 3 days later. I felt scared and heavy-hearted for Billy and Brad, watching them step back into the same circle, knowing full well it could destroy them again. It breaks me to think she might trust him once more, only to be pushed away again. The stakes this time are too high. 2 children and the knowing question of whether she could recover from yet another blow. But then again, isn't that what makes us human? To keep believing in a happy ending, even when we're terrified it may never come. Before I wrap up, I have to mention the direction of the intimate scenes. And fair warning, they're steamy. 50 Shades of Grey can step aside because sex life is a very different kind of hit. It's made for Netflix and late night viewing at home, not for the big screen. Here, it feels free and fiery, shameless yet beautiful. I loved how they captured the closeness between Billy and Brad through color and music. And honestly, the soundtrack throughout this series is stunning. Every track deserves a place on your playlist. Of course, everyone will take something different from this show. Some will roll their eyes and call it nonsense or adult movie, filmed just to tick the 18 plus box. Others will catch entirely different motives and meanings. I've shared the thoughts that hit me the last night. If any of this resonates with you in a good way or bad one, then it's done its job. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe and tell me what emotions did this series stir up for you.